Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Abhineet Shukla and with me is Anita Anand, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses Europe's largest digital and startup event, VivaTech, stresses on insulating our planet against next pandemic, invites world to invest in India. Defence Minister of India Rajnath Singh says terrorism and radicalization are the gravest threats to peace and security in the world. Covaxin does not contain newborn calf serum at all, says Indian government. Indian IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad says Twitter failed to comply with the intermediary guidelines. And in Eurocup soccer tournament, Russia beat Finland 1-0 in St. Petersburg. Turkey faces Wales at Baku. As many states are relaxing lockdown norms, we advise our listeners not to lower their guard as the COVID-19 pandemic remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow the 4 simple steps. Wear a face mask. Maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing. Focus on hand and face hygiene and get vaccinated. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday said, India is adaptable and agile even in the middle of a pandemic. He pointed out that India implemented huge reforms across sectors, be it mining, space, banking, atomic energy and more during this period. The Prime Minister was delivering the keynote address this afternoon at the VivaTech, which is one of the largest digital and startup events in Europe. The Prime Minister stated that India offers what innovators and investors need. He invited the world to invest in India based on the 5 pillars of talent, market, capital, ecosystem and culture of openness. He said India is home to one of the world's largest startup ecosystems and several unicorns have come up in the recent years. Mr. Modi said, innovation can help where convention fails. He added that COVID-19 put many of the conventional methods to test and it was innovation that came to the rescue. He said, digital technology helped people cope, connect, comfort and console during the pandemic.
Before the pandemic, I refer to the pre-existing advances which help us during the pandemic. Digital technology help us cope, connect, comfort, console. Through digital media, we could work, talk with our loved ones and help others.
The Prime Minister said indigenous IT technologies helped our fight against COVID-19. While the Arogya Setu enabled effective contact tracing, CoWIN platform helped ensure COVID vaccines to millions. He said 2 vaccines are being made in India and more are in the development or trial stage. The Prime Minister also stressed the need for insulating our planet against the next pandemic. He said, focus on sustainable lifestyles must be ensured that stop ecological degradation. He called upon the startup community to take the lead in working with collective spirit and a human-centric approach to overcome this challenge. The Prime Minister said that India and France have been working closely on a wide range of subjects. Among these, technology and digital are emerging areas of cooperation. He said it is the need of the hour that such cooperation continues to grow further.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's keynote address at 5th edition on VivaTech, which is one of the largest digital and startup events in Europe. In conversation are Sharad Kohli, economic analyst, and Sonu Sood, AIR correspondent.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today delivered the keynote address at the 5th annual edition of VivaTech, one of the largest digital and startup events in Europe. Mr. Modi was invited as a guest of honor. Other prominent speakers at the event include French President Emmanuel Macron, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, and ministers and MPs from various European countries. Sharadji, what is the significance of Indian PM Narendra Modi being invited to deliver this keynote address? And what was the broad message that came across in his address?
Sonu, every Indian should be proud of the fact that the Indian Premier is being invited to such an important platform, Viva Tech 21. This is being held since 2016. And he was in the company of not just the French President Emmanuel Macron or Mr. Sanchez, the Spanish head, but there were also CEOs like Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, and so on. So some of the finest names in the world of business were present there. So for Prime Minister to be speaking at such a renowned platform and such an elite platform, I think it's a matter of pride for every Indian. I think the message which goes first of all for inviting Prime Minister in the keynote addresses, the message is very loud and clear that India is the next digital and startup power. That is where the whole invitation came from. Besides that, I think it also speaks about India as an emerging startup hub, and India as becoming the next digital power, I would say. So I think that was the significance of India being invited, Prime Minister being invited. And I think the message which Prime Minister broadly sent in his keynote address was he spoke about a wide variety of things. He spoke about how a population of 1.38 billion people. So it's easier for a developed country because of the size of the population to digitize the whole country, to digitize the citizens, to digitize the whole system, the whole administration. But for a population of 1.38 billion people, any achievement by way of digitization, by way of connecting people, I think is a huge achievement. I think that is what he highlighted, starting from Atal Innovation Mission and coming down to how he connected over 5,23,000 kilometers of fiber optic network, which has linked 1,56,000 villages. I think that is a huge achievement. It may seem very normal for the developed world. It may seem very normal for somebody coming from the world of information technology, somebody coming from a science background. But when you look at the sheer volume, I think that is what makes it outstanding. That is what makes the whole achievement to be talked about, to be noticed by the world. That is where India's prowess comes from. And he went on to highlight India's achievements, whether from CoWIN app, he went on to digitization of the schools. He spoke of Aadhaar. We all know that most of the country now is having an Aadhaar in their wallet. And look at the wonders of Aadhaar. Today, Aadhaar has become your identity. Aadhaar has become the way you deal with the government, the way you connect with so many things. So I think it's absolutely unbelievable. And the sheer numbers, I think, makes India stand out from rest of the world.
In fact, he referred to the pandemic as a big disruption. And in this context, he said where convention fails, innovation comes to the rescue. So can you just put that in simple words for our listeners, how the innovations which were brought about before the pandemic struck, how they helped us, and how has the pandemic brought out new innovative spirit in the country?
I think not just, Sonu, the spirit which comes out of pandemic, even handling the pandemic. I mean, take, for example, CoWIN app. Today, more than 25 crore people in this country have been vaccinated, which is amongst the top 2 to 3 countries across the world. If we leave out China, we leave out probably America. I mean, look at the sheer number of, and it all happened through CoWIN app, which was directly linked to your Aadhaar. You just punch your Aadhaar, fix your appointment in the nearest vaccination center, and it's done. And I think if we look at the pandemic again, 80 crore people who fall in the PDS category, we call it in the public distribution system. The way they were given free food is not possible unless you are digitally connected. If you're not digitally connected, it will be humanly and physically impossible to make sure that every person is getting the free food and the cooking fuel subsidy. And thanks to the connectivity through Aadhaar, that these people have been able to get the benefit, 80 crore is a huge number. And then when it comes to digital education programs, that itself, look at what happened during pandemic. I mean, the entire country education system came to a standstill. I'm talking about the physical education. But then the country did not take that as a setback. All schools, all colleges went into the digital mode. Today, I think exams are being held, the tests are being held, evaluations are being done, classes are being held, tutorials are being held, assignments are being held. Every single thing is happening through information technology, through connectivity. I mean, we've got so many dedicated apps which schools are using. They're using their own developed information technology platforms where children and students are getting educated. So I think pandemic has strengthened India's resolve. I would say when Prime Minister last year, when the lockdowns happened and when the country was suddenly taken aback by this pandemic, the Prime Minister spoke of something. He said, let us take opportunity out of this setback which has come. The setback is evident to the whole world. You can't do anything about it. I mean, the best which was being done was to lock down, and then the vaccines came. But before that, all you had to do is to sit back home. So I think when Prime Minister said there is always an opportunity in the crisis in a positive way, not in a negative way. So here was the opportunity when all the educational institutions going digital, and it was a huge achievement for the country when we've got 30 crore children in our country out of 1.38 billion people. If we leave out the infants, most of them were going to school. So to educate 30 crore children, of course, we can leave out some who are less than 3 years of age. To educate them and continue their education without interruption was again a very, very significant achievement. Then the pandemic came, there was Arogya Setu, an app which could track down where you were, how many people around you were COVID infected, how many people were symptomatic. That helped you in testing, tracking, tracing. Arogya Setu made all that possible. The pandemic has further glorified the need and the achievements of the country in the digital world. And then I would say that pandemic has been a catalyst to India's resolve in becoming a digital country.
In fact, he said that India has the world's largest startup ecosystem, and he talked about several unicorns. If we look at the unicorns, as many as 14 startups have already made it to the Unicorn Club in the first 5 months of 2021. In fact, in 2021, the unicorn story has many firsts, as the unicorn list saw the entry of first health tech, first social commerce, first infra technology, and first e-pharmacy unicorn. So you feel that this shows the resilience of the Indian startup ecosystem?
If we look at another number which our listeners of Spotlight would be very fascinated with, that 65% of India's population is below 35 years of age. And that is the age below which most of the startup founders belong to. So this is a country of startups. And when Prime Minister spoke of every person becoming an employer, I mean, instead of seeking employment, when the seeking employment became so tough in this pandemic-stricken world, that was the right time when so many people decided to go on their own. Again, an opportunity out of crisis. If you're not able to find a job, do something of your own. Startup India mission undertaken by the country a few years ago served as the right platform for these startups to launch. And some of the challenges which startups face across the world, they are not just confined to India. They are faced by startups around the world. I could name some of the challenges which Indian government and the Indian startup ecosystem is helping to solve. Like one of them is getting funding. So the Startup India Fund, which the government had set up in 2016, I remember, that fund is helping so many startups probably get their seed capital, get started. Then comes competition. The Startup India, if our listeners have gone through Startup India website, portal, the steps which Government of India has undertaken to help the startups, you will find it helps you fight competition. It helps you being tutored, being educated on believing in unrealistic expectations, because we find some of our youngsters, they want to become rich overnight. So I think the startup ecosystem teaches you that, look, have your expectations which are more realistic. Then when it comes to selecting suitable manpower, it comes to choosing the right partner, co-founder for your startup. Funding, I already discussed about how to manage your finances. Then a very important aspect which has come out of pandemic, we find data pilferages, data leakages happening every other day. Cyber security is another aspect which startups are now working on. There are startups which are exclusively dedicated to cyber security, and even who are not, I think, are trying to introduce mechanisms, trying to introduce measures which take care of cybersecurity, because as we become more and more digital, Sonu, cybersecurity becomes a huge challenge, because we hear some of the very largest organizations in the world suffering from data leaks, data pilferages, hacking. We found in America recently, there was a hacking done in the fuel pipeline. So I think cybersecurity is something which is a challenge for the startups, because most of the startups, they belong to the IT world. Then winning trust of the customers is another thing which our startup ecosystem is trying to inculcate amongst the startup founders. Another very important aspect, Sonu, that startup does not necessarily mean a digital startup, an app-based startup. The recent initiative undertaken by the government is that you could still be a manufacturer and still be a startup. You could start a trading and you could start a service which may not be related to information technology, and you could still be a successful startup. So I think Prime Minister's reference to the startup, that startups should focus on innovation, and there should be innovators, and India has got a host of talent, a pool of intelligence, intellectual assets, I would say, all that needs to be done is they need to be provided the right platform, which is what Prime Minister spoke about, that this is the way the country should move forward. And I can tell you that in the times to come, India will be a leader in the startup ecosystem.
When he was talking about the element of repair, he said that we should insulate against next pandemic and also on a long-term basis, sustainable lifestyle, fighting the climate change challenges. So that he said the startups should take over. And he talked about youngsters who are free from the baggage of the past taking charge. He talked about them entering areas like healthcare, eco-friendly techniques like waste management, agriculture.
Absolutely.
You feel that these are the new areas where we need startups to take a leap and make the difference?
When I said that startup is not just about having an app, normally when you talk of startups, you find somebody straight away starts thinking of an app, and there is an app and there is a mobile phone and I'm probably doing something, providing some service. But startup is much beyond that, which is why he referred to recycling of waste management. He spoke about agriculture startups. He spoke about climate change relating startups. See, wherever there is innovation, I think there is startup. So there is a cause-effect relationship between startup and innovation. Startup drives innovation and innovation leads to a startup. So there is a very close relationship between the two. So that is the message. And when he spoke about repair, what he meant was that last year, I found many startups who were taken aback by this shutdown, by the lockdown, because they did not have a long history behind them. I mean, imagine a factory who's been in existence for 30, 35 years, that faces a lockdown, so they can probably hold on to themselves. They can sustain because they've got bank balance, they've got their capital and so and so. But what about a small startup? Let's say if somebody has started with a few lakh rupees and suddenly there is a lockdown, he or she cannot bear the fixed cost. So I think he meant to encourage those people that do not get disheartened if there was a disruption, because the disruption was around the world and it was beyond anybody's control. Hold yourself, sustain yourself, have your spirits in place, hold your guns and get started again and try and learn something new from this disrupted world. A startup which is successful is the one who learns to survive in crisis. If you cannot survive your business in crisis, unfortunately, you may not be able to hold your guns for too long. It's because at some point, every business faces disruption. It may not be pandemic related. It could be related to a change in policy, a change in market, change in supply chain management, change of technology. It could be related to change of competition, change in the management. So I think crisis is the key word, and that is what he said, repair. That if you face disruption, you must learn to survive, you must learn to sustain, and do not confine yourself to simply an IT-based startup. Move on to agriculture, move on to waste management, move on to climate change. There are so many avenues, and best of all, I would like to suggest, which I'm sure must be on Prime Minister's mind, is Make in India. Try and set up a small manufacturing facility. Do not just focus on your mobile phone. You set up a small manufacturing, develop machinery, and wonders will work, because India is the next economic superpower. That was the hidden message, Sonu, which the Prime Minister conveyed at Viva Tech 21.
Absolutely. And Sharadji, he also invited investors by citing 5 pillars in the Indian economy: talent, market, capital, ecosystem, openness. What do you feel about this? How attractive do you feel the foreign investors find India as a destination, especially when funding startups?
That there are billions and billions of dollars hunting for good businesses to invest in. And I think India is the destination, is the message Prime Minister gave when he said 5 pillars. He meant that there is no dearth of talent, there is no dearth of hard work in this country. Come here, invest, and you will find that Indians are the most diligent, hard-working businessmen who will give you your return on your money, which you would not have imagined in any other part of the world. That was a message in my view.
Thank you so much, Sharadji, for this comprehensive discussion.
My pleasure.
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has hailed the Indian values of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam and Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina and urged every country to develop an outlook envisaging world as one family to encourage shared approach. Addressing the ASEAN Defence Ministers Meeting Plus, ADMM Plus today, through video conferencing, the minister called for a united fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The minister also highlighted India's views on dealing with major security challenges in the region. He said terrorism and radicalization are the gravest threats to peace and security in the world. He assured that India, as a member of the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, remains committed to combat financing of terrorism.
Terrorism and radicalization are the gravest threat to peace and security that the world is facing today. India shares global concerns about terrorism and believes that in an era when networking amongst the terrorists is reaching alarming proportions, only through collective cooperation can the terror organizations and their networks be fully disrupted, the perpetrators identified and held accountable, and strong measures be undertaken against those who encourage, support and finance terrorism and provide a sanctuary to terrorists.
The Defence Minister re-emphasized India's call for an open, inclusive order in the Indo-Pacific region. The 15th ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting is being hosted by Brunei as it is the chair of the ASEAN grouping this year. Union Information Technology Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad today said social media platform Twitter has failed to comply with the intermediate guidelines that come into effect from 26th of May. He said Twitter was given multiple opportunities to comply with the same. However, it has deliberately chosen the path of non-compliance.
Union government on Wednesday categorically said COVID-19 vaccine Covaxin does not contain newborn calf serum at all. Denying some social media posts regarding composition of the Covaxin, it said the calf serum is not an ingredient of the final vaccine product. It also said newborn calf serum is used only for preparation and growth of vero cells. Different kinds of bovine and other animal serum are standard enrichment ingredient used globally for vero cell growth. Vero cells are used to establish cell lives which help in production of vaccines. This technique has been used for decades in polio, rabies and influenza vaccines. Bharat Biotech Limited also on Wednesday clarified that Covaxin is highly purified and contains only the inactive virus components. The company has issued the clarification over the use of newborn calf serum in the vaccine. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
The centre is disseminating awareness of national helpline numbers for the benefit of citizens during the COVID-19 pandemic. The helpline number of the Health and Family Welfare Ministry is 1075. The child helpline number is 1098. For senior citizens of Delhi, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the helpline number is 14567. The helpline number of the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, for psychological support is 080 4611 0007. The Ayush COVID-19 Counselling helpline number is 14443 and MyGov WhatsApp help desk number is 9013151515.
Welcome back to the world news. The Sensex and the Nifty today witnessed modest losses after a record-setting rally in previous sessions. Both stocks fell more than 0.5% amid weak cues from global equity markets. Brent crude prices rose to trade above $74 per barrel mark. A report from the Business World.
The Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange declined 271 points or 0.51% to close at 52,502. Nifty at the National Stock Exchange also slipped 102 points or 0.64% to settle at 15,768. In the global equity markets, Asian shares closed with losses as investors showed cautious approaches before the US Federal Reserve meeting scheduled today. China's Shanghai Composite Index and Singapore's Straits Times both plunged 1.1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng declined 0.7% and Japan's Nikkei 225 ended 0.5% down. South Korea's Kospi managed to gain 0.6%. European shares were trading in a narrow range in intraday trade. Oil prices continued their rally of gains. Brent crude prices climbed to trade beyond $74 a barrel to its highest since April 2019. In intraday trade, Brent crude prices were trading around $74.30 per barrel. Back home, gold was trading 30 rupees up at multi-commodity exchange for August contracts. Gold was trading at 48,455 rupees per 10 gram. Silver prices also gained 400 rupees to trade around 71,650 rupees per kilogram for July contracts when reports last came in. And in the forex market, the rupee weakened 1 paise to finish at 73 rupees and 33 paise against the US dollar. This is Lalema Aneja Dang for World News, All India Radio.
In Eurocup soccer tournament, Russia defeated Finland by a solitary goal in St. Petersburg this evening. In another encounter, Turkey is currently taking on Wales in Baku. France defeated Germany by a solitary goal last night. In tomorrow's fixtures, Italy face Switzerland in Rome, Ukraine meet North Macedonia at Bucharest, and Denmark will clash with Belgium at Copenhagen.
With only 37 days to go for the Tokyo Olympics, Indian players are gearing up for the event. In the Olympic series today, we will talk about India's shooting hope for the Tokyo Olympics, Saurabh Chaudhary, in 10-meter air pistol competition. Saurabh won the gold medal at the 2018 Asian Games in 10-meter air pistol event. He was the youngest Indian gold medalist at the Asian Games. Saurabh took up shooting at 13 and practiced daily to fulfill his dream of becoming a sport shooter.
Yoga is more than just a physical activity. It is an ancient...
ये हमारे गांव के पास में गांव है, वहाँ पे शूटिंग रेंज है, वहाँ पे हमारे गांव से बच्चे आते थे, तो उनको देख के कि ये शूटिंग करने जाते हैं कि चलो मैं भी देख लेता हूँ एक बार चल के कि कैसा है, तो वहाँ पे जाके देखा, ट्राई किया, अच्छा लगा, तो वहीं से स्टार्ट हुआ है.
In the women's one-off test cricket played at County Ground, Bristol, England were 265 for 6 on the opening day against India when reports last came in. India debutant Sneh Rana bagged 3 wickets while spinner Deepti Sharma picked up 2 wickets and medium pacer Pooja Vaskar took 1 wicket. Earlier, England won the toss and elected to bat first.
The International Day of Yoga will be observed worldwide on 21st of June. The theme this year is Yoga for Well-being. COVID pandemic continues to affect lives and livelihoods of people world over. The importance of yoga in promoting holistic health of people is very relevant in such a time. Talking exclusively to AIR News, Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha, Secretary, Ministry of Ayush, said yoga is an integral part of COVID treatment.
Now that we have a lot of evidences that yoga is very good, different types of yoga practices are very good for prevention and treatment of COVID-19. Government of India has released National Clinical Management Protocol for treatment of management of COVID-19 through Ayurveda and yoga. So yoga is an integral part of treatment of COVID-19, and there are different designs and protocols of yoga practices available for COVID treatment.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian reports that Biden and Putin began talks at highly anticipated Geneva summit. Washington Post reports that Trump-era hunt for pandemic lab leak went down many fruitless paths and came up with no smoking guns. Wall Street Journal writes that Apple struggles in push to make healthcare its greatest legacy. South China Morning Post reports that US-Europe aviation deal poses fresh challenge to China's C919 jet. Wall Street Journal reports that Kevin Durant is the best player in the NBA again. Himalayan Times writes that magnitude 6.1 quake hits near Indonesia's Moluccas Islands. Today is World Sea Turtle Day. This is a day used to honor and highlight the importance of sea turtles. These creatures, like any other creature, are magnificent in their own way. Not only are sea turtles beautiful animals, but they are also show incredible perseverance and resiliency. After all, they have been nesting on beaches for millions of years. So of course they deserve their own day dedicated to their sea turtles, are ancient animals that have been around since the time of dinosaurs. Although they have been around for millions of years, they have remained mostly unchanged. It is important that we continue to do what is necessary to preserve these magnificent animals that have been around for 110 million years to guarantee that they stick around for another 110 million years. A quick look at the headlines once again. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses Europe's largest digital and startup event, VivaTech, stresses on insulating our planet against next pandemic, invites world to invest in India. Defence Minister of India Rajnath Singh says terrorism and radicalization are the gravest threats to peace and security in the world. Covaxin does not contain newborn calf serum at all, says Indian government. Indian IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad says Twitter failed to comply with the intermediary guidelines. And in Eurocup soccer tournament, Russia beat Finland 1-0 in St. Petersburg. Turkey faces Wales at Baku. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Mauritius.
Oh
this bulletin. We will be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.